Hello, I'm Emma Webb and we are here at the Art Conference. I'm joined by author and campaigner Tonia Buxton.
Hello.
So Tonia, how are you feeling about the conference so far? What for you has been the highlight?
So I think what I'm feeling about it is it's much needed. It's really much needed to kind of just give us an alternate view. So far, all the messaging have been very positive, and I think that's what we're desperate for now. Some positive messages as to how we can change, how change can happen, how it can be done positively, not just tribally the way it's going on in the world at the moment. So that's something that I've taken from this. I'm going to take with me and go off, because I feel a lot of the time when we're looking at world politics, at British politics, at the way the world is going, it's so negative, it's so dark, that coming to something like this and having some positive messages being told makes a really big difference.
Do you feel that this is quite different from other events that we've seen so far? So there are all sorts of events that take place regularly, annually throughout the year. And this is on a very different scale to other conferences, and it's really focusing on trying to generate a kind of positive message, a positive vision forward, with a focus on people going away from this conference and implementing it in their own sectors. Do you feel that there's something different taking place, that there's a kind of sort of renaissance going on in response to what, frankly, over the last couple of weeks has been quite a bleak state of affairs?
Yes, I think so. I think that it's got a more positive slant than a lot of the conferences that I've been to previously. And there's a lot of positive messages, and also firmly putting the responsibility in your lap. And I think that's quite a different view as well. You as the singular person can make a big difference. It's not just about being part of big groups, and the responsibility is given to you. So you walk out of here thinking, right, what can I do responsibly on my own, even, to make the world a better place? And in particular for children, I mean, Catherine Bevelting she's blown my mind. She always blows my mind, because as an old educator, so I was a primary school teacher in Tottenham for 8 years, and I saw the way it was just shifting downwards. And I just wish that she was Minister of Education, because I really can see how she could make such a big change, because how we educate our children is the future. It sounds like a bad soul song, doesn't it? But it really is true. And how their minds are, to a certain extent, as educators, we had the capacity to manipulate children's minds, and children's minds have been manipulated now for a long time into a kind of, well, you're just a victim. You know, it's all about, having no choice and being a victim, whereas the way she teaches is that you are powerful, you have choice. And I think that's the slant in education that needs to change.
Something that's come out of the conference, I think, over the last couple of days has been this idea of trying to create a kind of cultural resilience. So planting the seeds that created a free civilization in the first place through education, but also through people who are working in all sorts of different professions. Do you feel quite hopeful that people will go away from this event, which is called the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship? So the idea is that we have a responsibility as citizens to do something ourselves, rather than maybe relying on the government to do that. Do you feel quite hopeful that actually people can take this responsibility on themselves? Very much. We just interviewed Dave Rubin, and he was talking about Jordan Peterson's idea that you need to get your own room in order before you go out into the world.
I agree.
Do you think that there is hope? And I think, because I myself am feeling quite bleak at the moment about the situation that we face. Do you think that people will go away from this and actually be able to implement change, or do you think that the situation is now so dire that we really are in a David and Goliath situation?
I'm kind of in the middle of that, actually. I do think the situation is dire, but I do think there's hope. I think we can do it, and I think the main thing is, like you said, make your own bed, tidy your own room. These silly basic things that you can do, which are a stepping stone to the next thing. So the next thing is find someone that you can do good to. I mean, it's been around for millennia, hasn't it? That you pay it forward, and this is the message that you're getting here, that you can pay it forward, but first you have to be responsible for yourself. Some of the messages that we're getting are, to like conservatism with a small c is really the message throughout what I'm hearing here, and just looking after yourself, looking after your country, looking after society, and the most important thing is looking after the children. Making sure that the children are getting the right message is what I'm taking from this mainly, and that's the thing that I'm moving forward in a hopeful way, hoping that the messages that we're giving to our children won't be the messages that the ones that have got a generation ago, because I think we failed our children. We failed our children during lockdown completely, and we know that we're going to have to deal with the mess that we made there. I mean, I feel as a parent, as an adult, I allowed the governments of the world to manipulate my children. As hard as I tried not to happen, they did, and I failed them. So I'm not going to fail them again. I'm going to stand forward, and I'm going to stand in front, and I'm going to be a shield to all this rubbish, and let them understand that they are not victims. They do not need to do what they're told by someone who doesn't know what they're doing. They have to think for themselves and have an autonomy about themselves, an independence about themselves that means that they can live a good, true, free life.
Constantine Kisid actually gave a phenomenal speech yesterday, where he ended by paraphrasing Greta Thunberg and being very clear that he doesn't want his son's future to be stolen by the situation. You've obviously, of course, been very outspoken about free issues to do with freedom, particularly in relation to the COVID policies and lockdowns. When you look at the way that the police have behaved in relation to protests and so on over the last couple of weeks, the fact that as we are speaking now, Liverpool Street Station is occupied by protesters. When you look at what's happening there, do you think that this will be a breaking point for a lot of people, that given how, by comparison, the police lockdown protests, there are some people who've said that they think that people will have had enough, and they'll go out into the streets themselves and protest against what's happening, that people are sick of seeing the way that the situation has gone, not just with policing but at large, with people in our streets essentially celebrating the actions of a terrorist organisation. Do you think that this will be a breaking point, and that a lot of people who may have previously been silent or may not have previously realised quite how bad things have gotten, do you think that people will now be fed up and will start feeling that they need to do something, to take some kind of action to try and turn this situation around?
I do. I think it's a great awakening. See, I was on the first lockdown protests, where I had police officers come and scream at me in my face to go, literally in a tyrannical way, go home, or you're going to be arrested. I was ready to be arrested. I was done. You know, I could see that lockdowns were not working, so I was done. I was ready for it. And throughout consequent lockdown, they got better as the marches continued, the protests continued. But those first few were really frightening. And if you set them against the way the police behaved during the Black Lives Matter marches and protests, it was unbelievable. They were taking the knee during those, and they were shouting at me because I'm fighting for my children's mental health, for their freedom, and this is what we're getting. What we're seeing now is not that dissimilar. The way the police are behaving, taking down the posters of the kidnapped children, I mean, it's horrendous. And I think there needs to be a clarity with the message, because it's getting sullied. There is not a mother, there is not a woman, there is not a decent human at home that agrees that innocents should be bombed, or shouldn't have water, or shouldn't have electricity. We do agree with that. But what Hamas did was the work of the devil. It's beyond evil. It's so disgusting. Beheading babies, raping young women. I mean, you can hear my voice. I cannot stomach it. I cannot bear it. There is no comparison. You know, freeing Palestine has got nothing to do with what Hamas have done to the Israelis during that time. So you've got to just stop trying to wash it over by that. And I think people are now starting to see that, hang on a minute, this isn't making sense, this isn't adding up. I think they're too fearful to take to the streets. Because it's such an aggressive rally. Do
you think that the police are too fearful to actually enforce the law? That actually, when we've seen them, for example, the campaign against anti-Semitism, being told to turn their billboards off, do you think that the police are actually just too afraid?
Yes, I do. I believe they're absolutely afraid. I think that we need to rethink our police force. We need to strengthen our police force. We need better people in the police force, to be honest. I think there's a lot of really good guys, but unfortunately there isn't enough strength of character within the police force. Because when I was a child, I used to see a policeman, I used to sit up straighter. I had absolute respect for the police. I don't think my children feel the same. And that's because of their actions.
Very briefly, in a few words, you've mentioned education a lot. For you, is that the main takeaway from this conference?
Yes. Education, 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 every time.
Thank you very much, Tonia. Thank you for joining us.